Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. In my opinion, the weekend starts at 5 o'clock today. I mean, tomorrow's just Friday, right? I just wanted to show everyone. This is an email I got yesterday from a client. I won't say who they are, but they're asking what I told everyone I get asked about every year. I created a New Year scenario a few months ago. Don is ready to get started on the budgeting process for next year and ask me to create a fiscal base. Do I just delete the previous one and start with a new one? So every year I get this exact same question, and this is why we spend so much time going over what a new year is, how things get loaded, when they get loaded, how to reload, and then the follow-up question was, which options do I need to choose? So it's why we spend a lot of time going over this so that you guys are comfortable with understanding what's going on behind the scenes in ESP. And to save this back and forth, and that when you're ready to create a new year or reload, you you're comfortable and knowledgeable about what's going on in ESP. So it might seem like I'm beating a dead horse sometimes, but it's just from experience that I talk about these things. Any questions from yesterday? Okay, we'll give it just another minute or two. There's still quite a few people missing. Now's a good time to ask a question if anybody has any questions. I wanted to show everyone because in my beta, it wasn't working correctly, but the locking again, right? So when you create your adopted or any scenario that you do not want changed, and this would be especially important if you're working with other coworkers in ESP, right click and lock it. Are you sure you want to lock? Yes. And it's not working. It is locked, believe it or not. It's just not showing the icon. That's because of this database that I'm in. If you guys do that, you should see the yellow locks. And if you look here in the main grid, you'll see it's locked. And in the bottom right, you'll see that it's locked. And you should see that same lock right next to the scenario here. If you see a blue lock, which you should see and will see, this is when we do an update to your database. Like we'll be doing one here within the next, probably next week or next 2 weeks. And that's when we go to your database and we update all of the like procedures, the math and formulas and anything that goes on in the background. Every time you save or recalculate, all that stuff's being done on the database. And a lot of times there's enhancements or fixes that we need to publish to your database. So what we do is we lock your database with a blue lock, and that's called an update lock. And what that means is it's just telling you that if you unlock it and recalculate, your numbers might wiggle just a little bit. Now, I don't believe we do an update lock on your current year. It's just all your prior years, which you're normally not going in and changing or recalculating anyway. But if your numbers, and we give you a warning, let's see if this pops up. If you unlock a blue lock scenario, it even says upgrade locked right there. It will just tell you that we locked it because we did an update. Because you have to remember this scenario was recalculated prior to the update. And then if you were to unlock it and recalculate now after the update, the numbers might wiggle a little bit. And if they do, they would wiggle for the better. That means we found something, maybe a rounding issue, and it would round for the better, or more accurate, I should say, more accurately work. But just be aware of what the blue lock is. Before we do these updates I'm talking about, I don't want to make you nervous. We go through everyone's database and we copy it to test the same database you guys are in right now for testing purposes. We copy your production database to your test database. And then we talked about this yesterday, the baseline. We save a baseline and then we apply the update, we recalculate, and then we see if there are any deltas, right? So basically a pre-update baseline and then the amount, which is after the update. And if there are any deltas, even if it's, just a few cents, we will dig into it and make sure that if there is a delta, it's because it's actually calculating better. Normally there's no deltas at all. The numbers are very solid already. But we do make sure we don't just update willy-nilly. We go through every single client's database and do a verification about what we call it validation. We make sure that the update does not cause any problems or cause any big deltas in your numbers. But it's still safe to just say after we update to go ahead and lock these with the upgrade lock. So that, and just give you that warning that, hey, if you do recalculate, your numbers might wiggle a little bit. And if they do change, they would be for the better. And I believe a few years ago, we found we're like one of the fixed costs was not calculating correctly on the financials tab. It wasn't a big change. And but after the upgrade, it fixed that. So we sent out an email to everyone explaining that if you were to go in and recalculate, your numbers would change. They're changing for the better, but they are changing, right? And that's probably one of our biggest overriding issues that we are concerns is we never want you guys' numbers to change unless you change them. So if you see the blue lock, that's what that is. And then you should manually lock scenarios when you don't want anyone going in there and doing anything. Don't rely on yourself to say, oh, well, I just won't do anything. Because it's easy to accidentally open a scenario or think that you're in another scenario. And then you make a change and you realize you're in your adopted, right? So go ahead and lock them. It doesn't hurt anything to lock them, and you can lock and unlock real easily. So my advice is lock them unless you want to be in there and making a change. And just to show you one more time, you can either go into this scenario explorer to lock and unlock, or we've added it at the top of the tree column here. You can right click and unlock. You can also change scenarios here. You don't have to open Scenario Explorer. That's something we've added. Okay. Let me see if my connection is working. Doesn't look like it. Oh well, I'm in the wrong version. But this is what I wanted to show you just for your own edification. So I'm looking at 460 here, this account code, and I just wanted to show you where this actuals is coming from. So I did a right click, Infinite Vision Details, and this is a live look in Visions. And then this posted amount is where this number is coming from. So if you ever wonder where this amount is coming from, just do a right click, Infinite Vision Details. And if I select these two cells, the total down here is 3,036 here. So, you got to have faith that your numbers coming from Visions are correct. So, don't be afraid to spot check any of these numbers. And there are encumbrances. A lot of salaries get encumbered. They come from Visions as well. Some districts encumber salaries, some don't. So you might see an encumbered number here. And then that's why you have a a total amount column, which is the amount that's really been spent already, plus any encumbered number. Here's this account code has some numbers encumbered. And I'm not really sure how it works. Let's take a look. I don't think the encumbered numbers show up. I don't know where they come. I'd have to ask Scott. 8950. No, so this is just, if this Infinite Vision details would just be the amount here, this amount. There must be another table that we pull the encumbrance from. And there's, as far as I know, there's no way to see that from within ESP. I'm sure there is in Visions, but. Okay, so we talked about the lock and unlock, and I don't want to use the pre-release anymore. I'm going to go back to my beta. All right. Any questions about anything? All right, let me just do a quick roll call here real quick. Oh, hi, Kendra. I've been wondering where you were. Nice of you to
I've been
show.
sitting in with Kim on the other days. She's just in a meeting today.
Oh, okay. And Rocco and Natalie. Okay. All right, cool. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to showcase a couple more things before we get back to doing things in the grid. Screenshot. I know you guys have, well, there's different programs. We use Snagit, but also Windows has a screenshot program. ESP has a really cool screenshot program. If you go to Help, Screenshot, take screenshot, or you can press F11. And it's on my other monitor, but it gives you a little countdown, and then that's it. It clicks, makes a clicking noise, but it puts it directly onto your clipboard. So if you open an email and you're going to send to me, all you have to do is press Control V. Oh, I took the wrong, took a screenshot of my other monitor to see why I did that. But all you do is press F11. I'll have to see what determines what monitor it takes the screenshot on. But the good thing about this is it takes a screenshot of the entire window. So that, and we talked about earlier, that really helps when you're sending us emails. Hi, Becky or Quan, could I get you guys to start TeamViewer? One of you guys to start TeamViewer real quick. I just want to show everyone what I see. So this is we call it remote support, but it's run by a company called TeamViewer. It's a third party that we build into ESP. And this is how I can help you guys when you need help. We just did a session this morning with Sun Lee at Westland Wilsonville. And hopefully Becky or Quan will show up here in just a second. So all you have to do, okay, so Nutatai, she just launched TeamViewer from this toolbar icon right here. It will, and that's all she has to do. Then she will show up here. There's Becky as well. She will show up, and then all I have to do is click Assign to Me. I click Remote Control, and then she'll get a message back saying that I want to view her screen. She has to click Accept twice. I don't know why it's twice. And now I can see her screen. her and I can only see ESP. I can't see anything else on your desktop, on your computer, only ESP. And you can see that I can, wherever I click, you know, I can say, oh, you need to, you know, right click here, you need to grab this column and move it over. So I cannot control, but I can just point and click to say, do this, try this. So it's really helpful, and it doesn't take long to get it up and running whenever you need help. And if you have computer audio, we can use TeamViewer to talk. If not, once you launch this, I'll give you a call as soon as I see, because I get an email, I get alerts whenever these come in. And I can even switch between your, well, no, I can't switch between your, if it was on another monitor, I could switch between, but all I can see is ESP. A lot of times people want to show me something in Visions, but I cannot see in Visions. I cannot see any other windows except ESP. We would have to do a separate, there's a way to launch it separately from your computer rather than from with an ESP if we need to look at other things besides ESP. Okay, Kapkwan, thank you. So that's pretty cool, and it's really helpful. Back to this help menu, you'll never, I should say almost never have to worry about checking for updates. Either we will update these for you or your IT department, because most of you are running it remotely. You're running it either on a Citrix server or you're running it on the cloud. And we're responsible, or your IT department is responsible for updating the app. So don't worry about that. Okay. Okay, I want to show this toolbar, which you guys might have been wondering about. Now, you can see, before we do that, you can see that my scope bar got all kind of messed up. So these, you can move them and drag them around, I think. I don't do it very often. Supposed to be able to. You guys might have better luck than I do. Let me see if there's a reset. View. Yes, there are a lot of options, and sometimes even I forget where things are. Let me think. Grid, tree, tooltips. These are a lot of the colors. You know, feel free to go through these, and you might want to change turn the colors off, or add the zeros, change the font size, change the grid lines, word wrapping, tooltips. The tooltips are these, remember we talked about these yellow pop-ups that show you more information. Those are tooltips. You can, if you get annoyed at those for some reason, you could turn those off. I thought I could reset my, oh, here we go. Toolbars down here, reset. There we go. Okay, now everything's back to what I'm used to. Did everyone see where that was? If you go to view, down to toolbars, there's a reset. And you can even turn things on and off here if you need to. But the one I want to talk about right now is this one right here. Let me maximize. This one right here. This is called, we call it the QBE, which is query by example. And I'm going to do it on the, you can do it on the financials or the employees. I'm going to do it on the employees tab. And I realized, see, yesterday I was playing around and I realized I'm in the old scenario. So always double check your scenario. Whenever you close ESP, when you open it back up the next morning, it should take you back, not just to the same scenario, but back to the same tab and even the same row that you have selected. It should pop up and be in the exact same spot as when you close DSP. We save your state that you're in. We save you the view that you're in. So it should take you back exactly to where you were when you closed it. But when you're messing around, it's easy to be in the wrong scenario. So let me switch back to my New Year scenario. Okay. So let's say I want to find all the employees, and of course, it's all based on your scope initially, anyway. Over the cost is over $150,000. You could sort on the column if you wanted to and scroll down and find it, but we have this thing called QBE. So to initially get it started, you click this toolbar icon. It clears everything, but it still leaves your columns. So then you go into the column that you want to sort on, and it uses the equals, greater than, or less than symbols. I want greater than 150000. Press enter. So basically, it keeps your scope and your tree, but it just queries all the fundings by the property that you put in there. So these are all of my employees. For this case, it might be better to sum the scope. Again, we'll have to fix this, but if it shows up, your scope shows up like this, just, it probably only does it maybe the first time you open it for the day. We'll get that fixed. Did I not sum everybody? I don't think I did. Or maybe when you're in a QBE, it doesn't. That should work. You can even, okay, so here's all of my employees, alphabetical order, whose cost total is over 150. You could even combine it if you wanted, say, over 150 and anybody, you click the edit here, it goes back into edit mode. And now I want anybody with a FTE of less than 1.0. So it does an and. There's probably not anybody, there shouldn't be anybody less than 1.0 making over 150,000, but it's possible. Yeah, no records found. So anyway, so that's the QBE. It's when you're looking for specific values in the grid. And then when you're done with the QBE, or when there's no records found, I'm not in the QBE, so I can just go back to my scope. Okay, second toolbar, and I think the last one is the Save Grid View. Let me refresh. The Save Grid View toolbar. This is when you have your columns laid out in a certain order and you have a certain scope. that you want to preserve and can get back to easily. And as soon as this refreshes, I'll show you. So let's say that, like yesterday, we added the baseline total cost total. So if you add a bunch of columns and you want to save that, you get it set up the way you want it. And then you click the green plus in this. This is called the Save Grid View toolbar right here. And it's going to pop up a little form, and you have basically two options. There's of what to save. You can save the grid layout as well as the scope. This is a pretty simple scope, so this might not be something realistic. But if you have certain scopes that you want to get back to, you save it, you give it a name, and I'll just call it baseline compare. You can give it a description if you want to, and then you're given the option of including the column layout and the scope layout. And then there's some other scope filters. Filters are what we talked about, were active, inactive, on the financials, object types, expenses, revenues. You can choose what to include in the Save Grid View. If you're working with other people, you can make it public so that they can use it. You have a few other options here. A lot of this is for responsibility centers. If you want your managers, if you want to limit them to certain scopes or certain layouts, you can do that here. So I'm just going to save this. And now it's in this list here. And if so here's one that you notice that some of these have the scope next to it and some of them don't, next to the name. If there's no scope, that means it's just the column layout. If there's a name plus the scope, it is the column layout plus the scope. So I'm going to switch to this one. We put some in there. Everyone should have some in there, some default ones that we add. So feel free to play around with those. I'm not even sure what's in some of these. But it's just a quick way. You'll notice when I selected that one, it automatically changed my scope. Actually, there should be some fundings in this scope. And it did change my grid layout, my column layout. It added plan code here for some reason. I don't know. But and then if you want to edit them, you can go back to save now. It opens it up and you can make changes. If you want to change the scope, you can click here to change the scope. So you can edit the Save Grid View and resave it. So those come in really handy, when you want to quickly switch between views, especially on the Employees tab, and you have the same on the Financials tab. And then these buttons here, let me let this load real quick. Let me switch to one. If you don't click public, it will show up under just your user access views. This is specific to you, to whoever signed in. Let me switch to this one. So once you have it set, if you move things around, you can use this one. This will reset just the columns. This one will just reset the scope. And when I say reset, I mean reset it back to what's in this saved grid view. This will reset both. This will basically reset the view, reapply the view, because you might move things around or change your scope. And if you want to get back to it, just click. If you want to get back to just your scope, but keep your columns, click this one. If you want to reset your columns back to the saved columns, just this one. If you notice, we try to highlight what it's going to reset. This one will just reset the columns. This one will just reset the scope. This resets both. This one clears it. It'll take you back to none. And it'll take you back to the view that you had before you implemented the saved grid view. So we just added this a couple of years ago. Customers were always asking about this. Or the ability to be able to save layouts, save scopes, because you work hard to get it set up the way you want it, and then if you reset or change, you lose it. So now I don't see a lot of people using these, but I would think you would want to. So please feel free, use those and get comfortable with it. You can delete them as well. You select it and then delete. So. And if, let's say one employee, one of the users adds a view, the other person won't see it if they're in ESP until they click this refresh. That refreshes the list. That's all that does. So I think it's pretty neat. Any questions about Save Grid Views? I think once you play with it and see what the buttons do, you'll start to use it and like it more. Okay, I want to go back to, we've talked about copying from Infinite Visions and from the blue IV columns. And all we've talked about is doing mass copies or individual copies. So I want to talk about doing selective copies. Let's say I want to, let me see how to approach this. Well, the first thing I have to do is unlock my scenario. If you'll notice, I don't have my new amount and variance column right now. And as soon as you lock a scenario, those disappear because they're not needed. A lot of my icons in the toolbar are grayed out. I cannot recalculate. I can't really do much except just view the data. None of the columns are editable. Everything has a red border around it, which means it's not editable. So I do get that occasionally. People say, Tim, I can't do anything. Why not? Well, most of the time it's because it's just a lock scenario. That's why we put it used to be only on the bottom right, but that's why we added it up here too, so that you can see. So as soon as I unlock it, the grid will refresh. My toolbar icons go active again. And well, I'm sorry, I thought the grid refreshed. Let me refresh it. Because my new amount here, let me, if they don't show up, remember you can always click this reset, column reset toolbar icon. I'll have to check that. I really thought they just showed back up as soon as you unlocked it, but maybe not. Maybe we decided against that. So you can click here and now they're back. Sometimes we decide not to do things, or we just trying to make it easier on the users, but without confusing people too at the same time. So let's say you've reloaded your working and values have changed. and that's why you reloaded, but you didn't choose to copy on the reload. You can manually reload. I'm sorry, you can manually copy. You can use your scope. I'm going to go to I'm going to break it out by center. But I'm just going to select one. One center, Logan Academy, only general fund. It really doesn't matter how my scope is summed, as long as I'm broke out by what I want to copy. You can then right click, copy from working or actuals. But there's also, if you go to tools, copy, you can do mass copies, copy all budget items from working or from adopted, or this is the one I wanted to show you, in the scope from working or adopted. So if you need to bring in, I mean, if everything else is the same, you could just do all. But remember, you're overriding anything that if you've made any changes to budget items, you would be overriding those values. But so if you wanted to do just a certain center or just a certain function, you could put your scope in what you want to copy, and then right click copy, or tools, copy budget items in scope from working or adopted. Most of the time it's going to be your working.
And what does that do for calculated values?
Well, nothing. As soon as you recalculate, it might copy some values, but as soon as you recalculate, it's going to put in the calculated values.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me show the object here. So this one, for substitute, it would get copied over. But this one, this number would get copied over, but it's a fake number really, because as soon as you recalculate, that's going to come back to 386. That's going to come back to based what's on the employees tab. Same for all of these fixed costs. Only the fixed, when you copy from working or actuals, you're only really copying these values in the fixed amount columns. So at first, when you first do it, I believe this 290 would show up right here, but make sure you recalculate at some point to get the real value to come back. I'm not even sure if the 290 would show up there, but you would definitely want to recalculate regardless, because any other salaries that you've calculated won't calculate these fixed costs on them until you recalculate the scenario. And again, if you don't want to use the tools, copy, you can right click, copy. I think, let me see, this one is grayed out, and I believe it's because I'm not showing the adopted. Infinite Visions, adopted. I believe Scott and I talked about this. You have to show the column that you're copying from. Let's see. Yep, okay. So now I can copy from the adopted. We don't want you copying from a column that you can't see and know that you're copying from. So if you wanted to copy, because by default, your adopted is not there, just your working is there. And that's why your adopted is dark blue. You cannot edit this, but this working is light blue. you can edit it. I'm in some scope, so I can't. But because whenever you create your budget documents, this column is usually included. And if you wanted to make a change, you know, you could change it in Visions and reload, yes. But if you're up against a wall and you're ready to print, you might need to manually go in and change this number. But make sure you're unsummed to the object level. This working FTE, this is the one that's budgeted. Whereas this FTE is the one that comes from the FTE column on the employees tab, which I'm not showing right now. Right click, Infinite Visions, add common. And it, you know, make sure that when you're comparing those FTE columns, because I'm in a different scope, make sure you're in the same scope. Always with ESP, make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Okay. And you have the same options here on the employees, tools, copy all employees, copy employees from scope. You know, we do have a lot of options in ESP that somebody at one point needed, and that's why we have them. But if you don't know what it is or you don't need it, you know, just because I definitely cannot go over every single option. Clear, you could clear the baseline. You could even clear Infinite Visions. All you'll be using is the copy employees in scope or copy all employees. Copy current, that's the same as right click when you want to copy just one employee. You could even, now that we have the baseline, you could copy from the baseline. Okay. All right, so we talked yesterday about adding new amounts to budget items. I want to talk about overrides, which hopefully you're not doing too much of, but it's possible. Let's say that we want to override, find a smallish number, this workers' comp account code. So it works the same or similar to if you're changing just a regular budget item. Actually, hang on. The best way to do it, of course, is to take out the summing and move the object to the bottom. So this way you're looking at the full account code. And I want to change this workers' comp value to $900. So it's similar, and you guys can follow along. Put the 900 in there, you press enter, but because it knows it's a calculated value, yes will fix it to $900 regardless what is calculated. If you say no, it's called a variance or a delta adjustment, and it knows that that's $73 more than what's currently there. So it will keep what's currently there and always add $73 to whatever. If you go to the employees and you change the employees, which would change this value, it would always add $73 to that number. So you're saying always add whatever's calculated, calculate it, but then add or subtract, you could put in a negative number, $73 to this value. I'm going to do just a flat override and just say yes. Save it. Put in my awesome comment. Process log is going. So now the 900 is here in the fixed amount column, and I have a red pin. And this tells you, if you look, has fixed adjustment, red pen 900. So we're override, and notice the amount here now is 900. So that basically just tells ESP it's going to still calculate here, but it's not being involved in this final amount. So you're basically overriding what ESP is calculating. We see some districts with a lot of red pins everywhere. And that's okay if you want to do it, but it really, there should be, maybe we should change the rate that's being used to calculate workers' comp. And let's do another one. This one, we want it to be $2,000. And I'm going to say no because I want it to be a variance adjustment. Notice that you have the red pin, the blue dot will go away with the little delta symbol. And again, you can make many of these changes before you save. So now it's going to add 1001 to whatever is calculated to get this final number. So if this number changes, it's going to add 1001, and then this number will change as well. And notice that it's just a red pin with a delta. So that's how you override calculated values. If you want to move dollars, you can, this is fairly new, you can right click. Oh, let me go back to these pins for a second. So now, let me go back to a scope and show you that this red pin will always exist even if you're not in, let's see, Fund 100. Move my object back up. If there's any budget item in the summing, it's going to any budget budget item that's been overridden, it will carry that pin all the way up to the top level, right? Because that was just one budget item in center 002, but it will carry that all the way up. You can put the mouse cursor here and see where, well, it doesn't show the entire budget item. But you would have to, if you wanted to see exactly which budget item has the override, you can right click, show overrides, and it will tell you the full budget item that has the override. Either that, or you can, you would have to go to your scope, put the object in, take the summing out, and we call it drill down. You would have to drill down all to the full account code that has the budget item, the override. If you have a lot of budget items, you could right click to add, you go to the model. Remember, the first thing when adding a column is which data set do you want it to be in? And this override is in the model data set. So I'll go to the model, override. There's an override submenu, and I'm going to just click add all. There's only 2 of them. So this should be checked. It is a fixed amount override. And if you were, you can do this with any of the status. And when I say status, it means just a checkbox. If you do full summing, if you like to look at your scope this way, you have it. And if you were looking for it, and it's a, you know, there's a lot of them, you could sort on this. I believe it's descending. I could be wrong. No, ascending. And that will move anything checked up to the top. So all of your overrides would show up at the top. Any questions about overrides?
How do you clear an override?
Well, there's a couple of ways. Yeah, good question. You can put the new amount. Let me well, first of all, you can right click. No, wait, hang on. I'm sorry, it's been a while since you put 0 in the new amount, and it will ask you if you want to clear it. And it's going to say, are you trying to set it to 0? If you're trying to set it to 0, you say no. If you put 0 in and click yes, that will clear the override and reset it back to the calculated amount. Or, I believe, let me refresh this. Is it clear overrides? If you right click on it, you can say clear override. And it does the same thing basically. It's putting in okay, so now it's cleared. Now we're back to 827. All right. I meant to put a center in because now if you look down here, there's this 8,800. That's how many records I'm loading. And when you don't pare your scope down, you'll get a very large scope. And it can take a while to load. Especially if you don't have any summing in your scope. I didn't think it took this long. Hope I didn't lose internet connection. Let me just put a center back in here. And the object at the bottom, no summing, okay. And I want to get rid of these two columns. I added right click, hide, right click, hide. Any questions about the overrides? I cleared the one, but I still have this delta one here. Moving or splitting budget items. Let's say we want to, let me find a good one here. Don't have a lot in this. Okay, we'll split 0316. If you want to move all of the money, if you click on this account code, and you're going to see this again on the employees, but it will pop up with, okay, well, where do you want to move it to? And before I move it, I suggest that you cancel this. I suggest that when you're moving budget items or splitting budget items, you have in the grid or in the scope where you're moving it to. So I'm going to move something from 02 to 03. So I can put both center 2 and 3 in. Because this way, when it moves or splits, you'll see it disappear from where you're moving it from and reappear to where you're moving it to. Actually, it'd be easier just to move it to a different function so we can see it right here. So you just click on the account code. I'm going to move it to function 2140. And when you do it this way, you're moving all the full amount. I'll be moving $1,200. Put in a comment, click OK. And you'll get a confirmation where you're moving it from to. When you're moving one budget item, the confirmation's not necessary, but you could move a lot of budget items at one time. And I'll show you how to do that. And anytime you're creating or moving employees or budget items, it takes a few seconds longer because it has to actually create the record in the database. And it has to calculate it. So now, I forgot which one I moved. Oh, it was this one right here, 316. Oh, no, didn't I move it right here? So this is a case where, let me look at my audit. Oh, it's going to be in the, all right, just a second. This is why it's good to have where you're moving it to in the grid. From 100, 1251 to 2140. Everything else is the same. Object 316. So why don't I see 316 here? All right, guys, I apologize. I don't know what happened. All right, I will have to figure out what I did wrong there. But it's going to leave the old one here. The value is 0 now. But I'll have to figure out what I'm running on. Like I said, I'm running a different version on a different database. You guys try it. I know it works on the pre-release, but for some reason, I've got to see what happened to my object. When you click on the account code, that moves the full amount. If you want to move partial amount, you have to right click, move. And this gives you, oh, I'm sorry, not move, split. Split. And it gives you a similar form, but it gives you a field for, do you want to move dollars or a certain percent of the current dollars? So if I put 50%, if I put 50 in there, it would move $50. If I put 50 in the percent symbol, it would move $5. Of course, it'd be hard to move $50 from $10, but you get the point. You can either use dollars or percent, and it will move this, it will split this value to whatever new account code you put in here. All right, let's take a quick 2-minute break. I want to refresh and see if I can see where my 316 went, but let's take a quick 2-minute break and then we'll get started. All right. Let me see. That's really confuses me. Oh, there it is. Maybe I just wasn't looking in the right place. Okay, so there's my, if anybody's listening, there's my 1200 that I moved. And there's the old 1200. Maybe I was just looking, I must have just been looking in the wrong 2140. There it is, the full account code. Oh. Oh, here it is. 2140. 100, 2140, 316, 002, 320. Oh, I see. So it's, okay, so I think it's just a display issue. I would think it would be down here. So let me take a screenshot of that. I'll look at that after we get done with training. I take screenshots all day. So that 316 that I moved is here. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. Oh, wait. Oh, wait a minute. There's two 002s. One's called Multnomah Learning Academy and one is called Logan Academy. Okay, so something's wrong with the budget elements. So there's a 002 Logan Academy. So remember, this would be something that I would go to the budget element and look directly at the budget elements and see. This happens sometimes. Envisions duplicates get created, you know, and ESP doesn't know, it just loads them in. So sometimes, especially, and like I said, in a new year scenario, or especially with a new district, we find a lot of these types of issues. So why do I only see Logan and not Multnomah Learning Academy? All right, well, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but that's somehow a extra 002 got created in here and it confused ESP. It did put it in 002, but not the same 002 that it came from. Okay. At least now I know what the problem is. Okay, so any questions about the splitting or the moving or the overrides? If you wanted to, and we did this the other day, let me give an example. I did this with Jefferson County. Let's see, how did we do it? They wanted to move, they were closing out a fund. It was Fund 206. I don't know what, I should look here first before I do this. Probably okay, we'll put in 200. They were closing Fund 206. So I did it for her. I put in both funds into the scope. And of course, there is nothing in 200. So let me find, just clear this for right now. They were moving, okay, 201. They were moving all of their employees from 201, actually it was 206, but from one fund to the general fund. So you can select, and when you move budget items on the financials that have employees associated with them, it will move the employees as well. So that's really important to understand. If I move all of these licensed salaries, right click, move, right, where it's 18.5 FTE. And because I'm at a sum scope, all I had to do when I did the move was change the fund from 201 to 100. And click OK, because I'll get another prompt. Don't know why. I did it the other day. But you can move all of the employees when you move them from the, oh wait, I'm sorry, I didn't. I did do it from the employees tab. But if you do move them from the financials, it will also move the employees. But I did do it from the employees tab, now that I remember. Because I wanted to see them actually move. This is why you would want to put, let me clear my scope, 100, 201. It's a lot of employees. So collapse it. So here's 200. You can right click on the fund level and select move funding. Change this to 100, click OK, and it will move each employee in fund 200 to 201. All the other parts of their account code will remain the same. Let me reset my layout. Oh, it's because, see, I'm in this save grid view still. That's why my account code was missing, because that wasn't part of the save grid view. So if you move from one fund to another and you leave, let me bring this back up as soon as this refreshes. You leave the other elements as is. As an asterisk and just change the fund, it will leave all of their other elements the same. The only thing that will change will be 100. It takes a while to do it. So because it has to inactivate all of these and then recreate their records in a new account code in 100. And this is why you want to show both funds or where you're moving to in the grid so that you'll see them gray out here. They will remain here because remember we said that they will always stay here if they have data in another data set. And these originally came in from Infinite Visions. So they'll stay here, but they'll be grayed out. But they'll reappear in Fund 100. So we had one district that they created. It was Westland Wilsonville. They created a new campus. So instead of by fund, they did it by center. I think it still was probably 100. So then you can go by center. Buckner. Logan. And basically the same concept. You can put it by whatever, group it by whatever object or element you want to move, whether it be center, function, fund, area. So then I can right click here, move, and it'll move just these employees and recreate them up here in 001. And again, you can do this on the financials as well. If you move an entire center, it will move all of the financial dollars as well as the employees. So any questions about that? We'll come back to the employees and I'll show how to move individual employees in a minute. So we talked about splitting, moving, overrides, spread adjustments. I hope everybody understood the spread adjustment that we talked about yesterday, about it spreading proportionally to the existing. Let me see if I can show a good example of that.
Tim?
Yep.
May I ask you a question? I'm sorry. I would like to clarify something on moving certain amounts. So I was following along in my test database,
Yep.
and I was trying to move just like textbooks for one of the schools, and I wanted to see if I can move it to a different fund.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting kind of I can't proceed forward. It says cannot move employee roll-up account. I'm in the financials tab and I'm just trying to move an object code like a 0420.
Right.
So how come that would be considered an employee roll-up account?
It shouldn't be. Why don't you
Okay,
take a
and this is-
screenshot if you can and show it to me? Because let me find a 420 here. How are you moving it? Are you right clicking or are you
Yeah, I
clicking?
clicked on the account. I sorted my scope so that it would show the entire account code. I right clicked on that account and I said move, and then I'm in the screen where it says move budget item, and I'm just trying to type in a new account string with a different fund number, but I can't click on the OK because it's grayed out, and at the bottom of the screen on the left hand side have this message that says cannot move employee roll-up account. And if this is something that I can maybe address with you outside of class, that's fine too.
Okay, well, let me just see. Okay, so here's my screen right now. I'm showing fund by object 420.
Okay,
Can you see my screen okay?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so, well, first of all, what is do you have any summing in your scope or not?
Mine are all green and I just have it sorted
Oh,
by the general fund.
I see. So you are summed,
Yeah,
fully
like that.
summed. Okay,
Yeah. So that I can see the entire account string.
right.
And then I
Okay,
just right clicked on one of them. And yeah, I did that. And then I clicked on move.
okay. And you
And then I
changed
selected a new fund, right?
fund, all right.
Oh, I didn't do it from the drop down menu. Did I
Where
have
did
to
you do it
do?
from then?
I just typed in a fund number that I know
Oh,
exists with that account string.
right. Let's see. Well, that should work too, typing in a number.
Yeah.
You left the object the same?
Yes. I left everything else the same. I just tried to do it from the general fund to like fund 200.
Right. Well, that should work.
And then I typed in the description and then the okay is grayed out. I can't proceed forward.
Did you put in 10 characters? 'Cause if you,
Oh, I did 4.
right, because it has to be 10 characters.
Oh, geez. Okay, now it works.
Right, and it
Thank you
says
so much for
minimum
clarifying.
length 10 right there.
Mm,
Yeah, because some
well, I
people were
clearly
just
didn't
putting
do
in
that.
a couple of dots like that, and that wasn't really
Yes.
working very well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. All right. All right, so we won't be moving that one. And again, if you'll see it's dark green, that's because there's nothing to move. Right? Only the ones that have amounts can be moved. If you right click, these are actually empty. And once you get a lot of these, this is when you would want to recalculate, or when you do recalculate, click the remove empty records, and those will go away. Same on the employees, if you have any empty employees. It seems like a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, they like Natalie just then, they like it fully summed like this. Is that something that people prefer? Natalie, you prefer it like this?
Well, I prefer it like that because in iVisions, that's all I deal with, just the entire account
Oh,
codes. I mean, I'm familiar with all of the components of it, but
right,
in my mind, that's how I see it. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because
why
what,
I personally like it like this.
right, I think it was just last year that we added the ability to do it like this, to view the grid like this. And then I noticed when people were sending me screenshots or I was doing remote support, I noticed more and more people just like to look at it like this. If you
Mhm.
do want to look at like this, but you're not, you're not sure about the elements, if you right click, you go to account, you can put in the names. If you hold the control key, when you're adding columns, if you hold the control key, you can add multiple columns. So I click fund, and notice it'll just stay pending until I let go of the control key. Right click again, account, object, then you let go and it will refresh. So that way, if you want to put the name in to help you realize what you're actually looking at in the account code, you have all of the elements there under account.
That's a good feature.
In Business Plus, one of our Washington districts, they have their, in ESP, we have fund, function, object, area, but they have a Business Plus uses a different account structure. But in ESP, it looks like this. So we added the ability for them, there says Business Plus account. So that this is going to be the same because ours mimics Vision's, but they're able to see what the account code looks like in Business Plus. Okay. Speaking, let's go over a few of these. There's not that many on the financials tab columns that you will need. There are quite a few, but generally you don't really need to see them. I'll show them to you just so you know that they're there. These are the roll up, or I'm sorry, the calculated accounts, columns. There's always a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Oh, in 240, I got to say that's, I did the same thing. In 420, there are no roll ups. So let me change my scope. We'll just look at 100. We'll look at Buckner. That should be fine. My object. We don't use breakdown. So this is just telling us that because all of these roll up columns and non-roll up fixed cost columns, it's basically just to get to, I didn't add it in the right place, sorry. This is that calculated total column. Let me move it over here. Most of these columns are how we get to the calculated total. For example, for license just 0111, this is the roll up salary. Employee total. This is coming from the employees tab. It comes into this column first, and then we move it into the calculated total, this is the column that you see by default. But these are there if you ever need to look at a breakout of how these numbers are being calculated. For example, Social Security, right? It's being calculated because there's two types of salaries. There's the salary that's coming from the employees tab. And then there's $2,913 in 0120 substitutes. So if you look at Social Security, $223 is the non-roll-up. And when we say roll-up, remember, we mean rolling up from the employees. So 7.65% of this substitute is this Social Security, And then 4,908 is coming from the employees. So those two combined is how you get to the calculated total for this scope. So by default, you probably will never look at these, but if you ever need to know that they're there, if you're just trying to scratch your head and wonder where these calculated totals are coming from. I use these a lot when I'm helping to troubleshoot or figure out where data, how it's being calculated. So just remember that this calculated total is a summation of other columns. Okay, and we have inflation. We'll talk about inflation tomorrow. That's a pretty cool deal. I'm going to reset my layout. So going back to the columns or the menu here, QBE, what's this? I don't even know what that does. Let's see. Oh, that gives you well, I moved my cursor, but that tells you some of these have them, some of them don't, what the column does, what it contains. What's this? You can pull up a column selector if you want, but hide is something you'll need. Hide all but selected is pretty cool. If you don't care about the actuals or the blue infinite visions, you could use that if you only wanted to look at the model. Hide all but selected, just to get rid of the noise. And always remember this toolbar button. And if you're in a saved grid view, use one of these to get you back to the saved grid view. We'll reset your columns. The calculator we talked about, the sorting, which it's best just to use one of these toolbar buttons here. And then within the model, you have the roll-ups, which I just showed you. If you have responsibility centers, list, you don't have that many. Some of you guys might use the budget control groups. Remember, anything that's in the list submenu is going to be a pull down. Let me, there's none set up here. So I'll show you on when we move over to the employees. And then just some, like I said, on the financials, you really won't be using too many of these, except for all you really care about are the new amount, variance, fixed amount, calculated, and amount, and FTE. Any questions about the financials columns? Oh, I didn't finish here. And you have your infinite visions columns, your actuals columns. Remember, this was the baseline that we saved yesterday. Generally, all you're curious about here on the financials anyway is the amount, which is the same as this amount, so that you can see your deltas. Right? Remember how to do a delta. You put the two columns next to each other, right click on the rightmost column, add the delta. Right, so those steps and colas that I did in this center, it's going to cost 7,977. 63.85 in salaries plus associated payroll cost. But the further down here, this is where I went a while ago and I added the, this is the account code column here, which is there by default, and you generally want that there. And then here's each of those individual elements that we talked about. And you'll notice it's not in the model because the account code is outside the model. It doesn't live in the model. Status, we talked about, these are those just check boxes. If you wanted to see anything that's been split, you really won't use these, so don't worry about it. Override, you can preserve amounts. We have some districts that on the assumptions, if nothing is being calculated, let's say that there's no employees and Social Security is not being calculated here. You can tell it to preserve the amount and it will still use this amount if nothing is being calculated. And I'll show, when we talk about the assumptions tomorrow, I'll show you that. But that's what preserve amount does. Priority, user, you can actually create your own columns if you want to use your columns and put values in there. I don't believe anybody's using those currently. And then some other stuff. Okay. Any questions about the financials? Moving, splitting, overrides, changing fixed amounts. Okay. All right, let's look at the employees then. This is where you're going to probably do most of your work with the employees. And we talked about moving. You can move individual employees. They have an account code just like on the financials. You select it, and then you just give it a, I'm going to move this one. I hope it works this time. I'm going to move it to 002 again. And we'll see. You just give it an account code and click OK. And oh, you can move multiple at one time. That's right. And then save it. Add your comment. See, I already see a problem because I selected 002 Logan Academy, and this says 002 Monoma Learning Academy. So we might not see Kara show up correctly because of that, which I've got to fix. I've never seen it where there's two centers with the same ID. When we bring on new districts, it usually exposes a lot of issues and visions, a lot of like housekeeping that hasn't been done correctly. Only because we rely on that data to work correctly in ESP. So with new districts, there's a lot of back and forth with HR and just getting their infinite visions cleaned up so that when we bring it into ESP, it works correctly. I don't think she's going to show up. Oh, she did. Okay, so that worked for some reason. So notice that the move from, we call it the move from, grays out. All her dollars have been taken out. And she now appears purple. And remember, purple means anything new in this scenario. Because if we switch to a different scenario, she would still be back here in black in Fund Center 001. So this purple means it's something that's only in this scenario, something new that has been added. When you, I should have showed you over on the financials. If you create a new budget item, it will show up as purple. And that reminds me, we forgot to do that. You can add budget items. I'm back on the financials. I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but I realized I forgot this. It's on my list. If you want to add a budget item that doesn't exist here, you select, generally you want to select where you're going to add it. Because when you click the green plus up here, it will fill in a lot of the elements that you selected in the grid, just to save you a little bit of work. The reason why function object area is blank because I'm summed, but it doesn't matter. You can still put in all of your pertinent elements. And you give it an amount. We'll call it $1,000. Add your comment. It's adding this new budget item. And there it is. Dues and fees, $1,000. So that's how you add new budget items. Let me try something real quick. You can, because now that I'm at full scope level and it has the plus, means it was added and it's in purple. Since I added it, I can delete it. Notice the red X in the toolbar is available. That's because it is added by you. And only, just like on the employees, only budgeted positions that you manually added are financial items that you manually added can be deleted. If they exist in the other data sets, which of course this one doesn't because I just created it, you would not be able to delete it. It would be black text. So this account code here, it doesn't live in the working or the model, only in the actuals. But because it's in the actuals, that's why it's in the grid. So only items that you've manually added can be deleted. If you don't want a certain item, instead of deleting it, you just have to zero it out. So here's, now that I'm not sum, we can see this budget control group. And remember, this was under the model list. So anything that is a pull down, multiple select is going to be in this list submenu. Because you'll really, where you will really use it is over here on the employees. I think it's refreshing because I added an item on the financials. Where you'll really use this, I've seen people use it, if you go to model list, PERS status, PERS, here we go, PERS. There's a lot of times you'll want to see people's PERS status. And a good example of when you would use this are these new hires that come in. Remember, we looked at one yesterday. So actually, she was not a new hire. She was moved. So her PERS status was probably already correct. But anybody that's a new employee, you know, their PERS status might be set to waiting. But next year, they're going to be tier 1, tier 2. So you want to make sure that for these new employees that are coming in, that their PERS status, you can add the workers' comp status, statuses that are not set correctly for what they're going to be getting next year. You'll want to make sure you change in the model, workers' comp. Right, because these have dollars associated with them. And if they come in as set to none, they're going to be in the model as none. So be sure for any employees that you bring into the model, that this is why you might want to, when you first copy your models into, copy your employees into the model, you might not want to annualize it first. And remember, annualize changes their work days so that, let me show you, it's a little bit easier to spot new employees. Because their work days will be low, usually. But then again, if you do annualize, remember that you get that annualization arrows on the icon on their name. The green up and down arrow here. So see, here's a good example. Herbert, he's at EE waiting. But next year, you know, he's probably going to be on tier 1, tier 2, or OPSERP, I don't know. But probably right now, he is not having, depends on what the rate is. If we look at his fixed cost, let's see what he's calculating for PERS. See, PERS is calculating $0, which for next year is not going to be right. So, and I can see his work days are 186, right? Because he was annualized. So this would be a case where you would want to change his his PERS status. And you could even, let's see if this works, sort this column so that you get all the weightings next to each other. This might be a good time to use the QBE and just bring in people that are on the weighting. A shortcut here, let's say you want to change all of these. I'm going to change the first one to OpSERP. And then you click away, click back, and then click and drag and press Control D. I believe it's the same shortcut in Excel. Basically, it will copy down every cell that you have selected. You can do that with work days, work hours, any of the other cells as well. But it's a nice shortcut so that you don't have to manually change them, each individual one.
Tim,
not
what
gonna-
menu did you go to get that PERS on there again?
Right click, go to the model, because we're in the model, list. And the way I try to remember it is anything that is going to be like a selection like this, where there's a pull down menu.
I'm not seeing PERS when I go to the same place.
You're on the employees tab.
Yep,
Okay.
model lists.
It might say retirement status.
Retirement.
So what you might want to do, Rocco, is right click and say update. Yours would say update retirement column label. And you can change that to PERS if you want to.
Got it. Thanks.
Right. So whoever was there before, they wanted it to say retirement. So don't forget, guys, we want you to be able to change these column labels to something that as soon as you look at it, you know what it is. The big one that I see is PERS, fixed cost. Some districts call them APC. Some people call them payroll cost. But change this to whatever you want it to be. And this one, get the final cost total gets changed a lot. But all of these are, I say all, but most of them. If you find one that's not changeable, let me know. There's probably a reason why you can't change it if you can't change it. Total wages, that one gets changed a lot as well. Some people call this, districts call this total pay. So whatever you're comfortable with, be sure and change this. And I see, since I reloaded the employees, I have a lot of inactives in the model. They're empty in my infinite vision, so they probably, let me add the actuals. Add comment. Add comment is generally what you want to add when you're looking at an entire data set. And it's just the default columns: work days, work hours, FTE, annual rate. I'm not sure why other pay would be in there, but so yeah, so all of these employees here, Kara Clemens, Anita Grossman, they have been hired or they've been moved since I copied these employees to my model on Monday. All of my columns reset. All right, let's see. Okay, so let's see if this works. Right click, infinite vision details. I'm not sure we have the tunnel set up yet. So here's IV details for her. She has 2 open positions. Usually the positions are going to be at the top. Don't worry about the supplemental, or these are all of those payroll costs actual payroll costs. Usually the top 1 or 2 lines is what you're interested in. A lot of times there is a hire date. You can see we pulled in a lot of information, the job family, the position ID, her work days, her work hours. We do not pull in FTE because I talked about this on Monday. We calculate FTE. And sometimes there's discrepancies between, because these, from what I've been told, are just manually entered in Visions. And they can, you know, anything that's manually done can be wrong sometimes. But let's see. Yeah, so I don't know. I'd have to dig in further to see why Kara was not here, because it says she started on 8/28. A lot of times what you'll see is when you'll see a grayed out person is they just got hired, or this position start date will just be within the last few days. That says she was hired. It could be that she was moved. I don't know. But regardless, there's an employee that's living in Visions that's not in my model. And I have to ask myself, do I need to bring her in to the model? And remember, you can right click, copy. And you can even click and drag. I could right click on here and copy. It would copy all of these at one time. So if you can find a way to group them in your grid, you can select them. And I believe, let's see, the control key works as well, just like in Excel. You can pick individual ones, right click, copy. This I would have to copy from actuals because they don't exist in my Blue Infinite Visions. If there's been a lot of changes and there's a lot of employees I need to bring in, it might be best to just go to Tools, Employees, Reload Employees. And then let ESP do all the copying for me by selecting this. And again, you only want to do this in the beginning when you're working with HR and getting your employees cleaned up. But this would do the mass copy for me in one go. I wouldn't have to manually hunt for employees I need to bring in. But just remember, anything that we've changed, you are overriding it. All right, we've talked about that a lot already. I hope everybody understands. And I'm sorry I go over it so much, but it's, you know, it's such a big area of confusion for a lot of people. Okay. Any questions about adding these columns? Okay, let me reset my layout. Let me refer to my training guide real quick. We talked about moving an employee. If you want to inactivate, right click, inactivate. You can inactivate quite a few before you save. But just remember, let's say that Kara, let me refresh this or activate her back. Let's say Kara's in this account code, you know she needs to move, but you don't know where you want to move her to yet. But you want to go ahead and get her out of Fund 292. It's similar to inactivate. It's called pending. And you set them to pending, save it. And it's basically just a status. But pending takes, it's similar to inactive. It takes her out of the, everything's italicized now. It takes the data out, the values out of this funding, and it puts a P next to her, which indicates that she is pending. That at some point you need to do something with her. And I want to recalculate my employees real quick because it's supposed to show up right here. A lot of people don't use pending, or I don't think I've ever seen anybody use it, but I like to show it because I think it's probably pretty important or could be used. But it's just, we want to remind you that you need to do something with her. You know she's going to be somewhere, you just don't know where yet, but you want her out of Fund 292. And if you'll notice up here where we track your general fund dollars and your FTE, there's a pending FTE. That's supposed to tell you how many FTE you have pending. And just to remind you that there's someone that you need to unpin and move. And it might take a recalc to get the FTE in there. And again, every time you recalculate, it's going to run those audits and tell you about those action items. And I still have these from the other day, over 1 FTE. And most of these in the beginning are going to be where if HR has moved an employee and they don't close the original funding. So they end up with 2 fundings open. Okay. All right, it didn't set. I'll go back over that tomorrow, the pending. I thought it was supposed to show up here, but let me check on that tomorrow. Let me make a note. We'll look at that. Like I said, nobody uses it, but I would think a lot of people would use it. But since I know that's a status, I can go to model, status, and pending. Let me find it. Hang on. There are, oh, here we go. Position, no, status. There are a lot of columns. Let me look in the save grid view. I believe we might have a default one, pending positions. Okay. So what this save grid view was, it also included a QBE, which we talked about earlier. And it's telling me anybody who has their pending set to 1. 1 in this case means check. The box is checked. So it's a good way to find people that you have set to pending. And then when you know where you want her to move, you can always right click and say pick up pending, which will remove the pending and just leave them there. Or you can say pick up and move if you know, okay, now I want her to be in, Fund 100. Might not. I'm gonna have a QBE. Hang on a second. Let me get back to my scope that I had. when you do know where you want to move a pending employee, let it finish. Right click, pick up and move. And basically what that does, it's reactivating her and moving her at the same time. So whenever you do know where, okay, she's supposed to be in Fund 100, you just do a quick move. And again, most things that you do in the grid, you can do numerous changes before you have to save. I've been just doing one move, one change and saving, which does take longer. Especially when I have a lot of all of the employees in my grid. So we moved Kara to Fund 100. And now the old status is no longer pending. So that's what pending does. When you want to change work days, work hours, you can just click in there and add the Control D works. So let's say it's a leap year and they get an extra day. Add the top row, select down, Control D. Same for the work hours. You can change salary plans here in the grid, but hopefully you're not changing too many, right? Because when you reload the employees, it reloads the salary plans and then the plan that each employee is on. So you would only do this if you've reloaded a new salary plan and you're moving everyone. You can click this ellipse here and change their salary plan, their grade, or their step. Again, they're not really overrides, but you're just overriding what the values that came in from Visions. I don't know if I talked about these yesterday, but the up arrows, and actually if you remember yesterday when I selected a row, I was losing the arrow. Now I'm not. The purple up arrow means that they stepped. And again, purple means it's new to this scenario. The black arrow with the line over it means they're already at max step. The purple up arrow with the line over it means they stepped into the max step. So this is the max step for this plan. Next year they will be at max step next year. Okay, tomorrow we'll do some more work in the employees, and then we'll look at the assumptions tomorrow as well and go over what the assumptions are, how they work, how they're used to calculate the values you see here on the employees tab and on the financials. And then we're getting close to the end of showing you everything that ESP does. I hope everybody's, at first it seems kind of scary. There's, where are all these numbers coming from? But once you understand how it works, where the numbers are coming from, how they're being calculated, the relationship with Infinite Visions, then it makes things a lot more palpable to work with. All right, any questions, anybody? If not, I'll see everyone tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Quick, leave meeting.
Thank you.
Bye.